Hello everyone, welcome to today's course for the pharmacy management. I am Yahan Li and I'm a clinical pharmacist in Wanfang Hospital. Today's topic we are going to talk about the REMS in terms for risk evaluation and mitigation strategy, and also we will talk about the pharmacovigilance first. This is today's outline. We will talk about pharmacovigilance first, and then go to risk evaluation and mitigation strategy. And I will provide you with some examples and hope we can see what are the pharmacist's roles in behind of these examples, such as in the opioid REMS program, clozapine REMS, and then the vigabatrin REMS. Here are some questions I would like everyone to think about first before we start today's course. On your right-hand side, you can see a balance of benefits and risks. That is all the things we are always talk about when you are planning to using a medication to patients. You have to consider what is the benefit for this patient would probably get from that medication. What is the probably efficacy that we can retrieve from the clinical study trials? And does this benefit can fit in these patients' characteristics or not? And in terms of the risk, you are thinking about what is the side effect that maybe happen to these patients, and what is the potential complications that this patient may get in terms of short-term or the long-term development with the disease progression. And for the risk part, we have to look into not only the clinical trials part, but also the pharmacovigilance study, and then why. So, to think first, what is pharmacovigilance? Second, why there's a need for doing pharmacovigilance? What is the difference between pharmacovigilance and clinical trials? What are the difference that is two different monitor resource or study resource can provide us with? And then who to initiate or who to report of a pharmacovigilance event that have to be targeted with. So before we start, I would like to talk about few history regarding drug withdrawals events. These are really true commercial drugs that have been put on the market but then have been withdrawn among countries, or at least from in the States, because of several serious safety issues. As you look at here, you can probably identify a few of those, like the trovafloxacin. They are withdrawn because of the risk of liver failure, and also like the cisapride, which is surprising. Like we often use these similar products like mosapride or domperidone or metoclopramide, but cisapride had been withdrawn in the 20s because there has been reports from many countries to report of the cardiac arrhythmia events. So these had several drugs that we can try to classify the reason to be withdrawn, either from the cardiac issues causing cardiac arrhythmias or from the liver toxicity part, and several we can see from myocardial infarctions or the rhabdomyolysis. And so these three organs, like the heart, the liver, and sometimes the renal, are the important issues that you don't want to just ignore. You have to take serious look if there has been some signals to showing you this is something wrong to be involved with them. Alright, so think about this. During the process of a drug development, where or which part can we better identify a safety issue or a potential safety issue? We know that in the process of drug development, you can come from the preclinical animal studies to the real human phase, which is from after the phase 1, starting phase 1, that we recruit the health people first to do the safety monitor already, and then also several pharmacokinetics study as well. And then we move to phase 2, trying to recruit real patients with with relatively small amount of subjects to determine the efficacy part. And then while after the phase 2, then we move on to phase 3, using the same population of patient group to do the therapeutic confirmation regarding both the short-term safety and efficacy issue. But then, after this clinical phase 3 is done, a drug, if has no very serious issues, then it may be approved by the FDA or other official institutions, and then get the new approval application done. But after that, you may have heard about phase 4. Phase 4, what is that for? We often also recruit phase 4 as the post-marketing phase, which means post-approval, several things still has to be monitored with, such as very specific safety issues regarding those issues that may have already been identified from previous clinical studies, phase 1 to phase 3, or other new but potential risks that yet to be identified. So phase 4 is a really important part in terms of the safety issue monitoring of the drug development process and after marketing process, and you don't want to miss that. And it is also for the phase 4 that we often refer and identified as the pharmacovigilance study. So drug safety is not the most important thing, I should say, but it is a really important thing that you never want to be ignored. So we can all agree with several things. That is, first, there's no medicine that is absolutely safe, and all pose some magnitude of safety and health risk. And then making sure that medicine are safe for their intended use is an ongoing process. You don't want to just shortly monitor that and then say case closed. And you have to start at the very beginning in the developmental stage, and then continues to long after medicine is in the market, which is the post-marketing phase 4 that we talked about. And this process is closely monitored by manufacturers and also the regulatory agencies. So this has to be officially done, and several acts has to be reinforced as well by the governmental power. So I would like to highlight again about the importance of pharmacovigilance, or in short, you can say the PV. So when you look at on the right-hand side, I list several things that clinical trials may have been done. We can do this observation in clinical trials, but still with some limitations, such as in clinical trials, it is a perfect or artificial environment that is not the real world. And patients recruited in the clinical trials are not taking any other medications that violate the study protocol, or hopefully, and if the protocol is strongly reinforced. And third, again, because of a very relatively strict inclusion and also exclusion criteria, those participants in a trial is often have less concomitant disease compared to the real-world patients. And when we talk about the drug exposure, because the time is limited in a trial, so people there are taking the drug as short-term. We are not quite sure what are they doing after the trial is done. is they feeling okay, or is any further monitor, or if they just give out the medicine for several reasons if once the observation time is over. And last but not least, like they're not part of vulnerable groups, or comparatively less again compared to the real world, which means the trials has often less to recruit children or pregnant women or elderly patients, except the medicine is for their need specifically. So on your right hand side is pharmacovigilance. Vigilance here we means to watching carefully to avoid any danger from happen. So you can see we have to use the real world data to report real things, and also to complete the safety data that extended from the clinical trials observation window, and especially for those unexpected or very serious adverse events. And for sometimes this part can only be captured through a pharmacovigilance study. So is it a true saying that a pharmacovigilance study is more than just catching error? By the WHO definition that we can see here, pharmacovigilance is defined as that the science and activities related to the detection, assessment, understanding, and prevention of ADR, which in turns to the adverse drug effects or reaction or other possible drug-related problems. So again, it is not only defined to a safety issue. During the pharmacovigilance monitor phase, we can to look at all these several things. So the most important is to collect data for the ADR or the AD adverse drug event, but also you can observe any other things that you think that worth to look at, such as the interaction of medicines, or whether there's a lack in the drug efficacy, or there's any issues regarding abuse or misuse of medicine. And there are some like quality issue may coming up as well in terms of the counterfeit or substandard medicines that you may need to have double QC check. And also there may be some medication errors to have from happening. So these all stuff have to be looked and monitored, documented properly during the pharmacovigilance phase. So what kind of the products can be covered by pharmacovigilance? Is it only, like as here says, the pharmaceutical things, only medicine? But the answer is no again, that the products under consideration can go beyond just the conventional medicines. So you can look into both traditional medicine and the more complementary drugs, like the biologics as well. And also not only the medicine itself, but the vaccines is another important issue to look at during the pharmacovigilance part. And also some blood products like the IVIGs or albumins, etc., and also the herbals, and even the medical device has to be initiated as the pharmacovigilance monitor. And before we move on, here are some terminology that I would like to make some clear first. I'm not sure whether students will have these similar puzzle things, just like I will have before, or sometimes still. That is, can you properly define what is adverse event to the adverse drug event or a adverse drug reaction? So I've already put out the answer here, that you can say, as for the AE, adverse event is the most the most broad and synonyms, that including the both the ADE and ADR. So an adverse event can say is defined as any harms occurs during during a drug treatment. But when we talk about the ADE, adverse drug event, that is specifically to talk about the harm that is caused by drug application. And when we talk about the ADE, there is sometimes no need to have a causal relationship during this cause. So any adverse event that just happened to happen can be counted as the ADE. But if we are using the word as ADR, adverse drug reaction, that is strongly or is more expected to have the causal relationship established, and also often refers to when this drug is caused by the drug itself when it is at its normal dosage or the normal use. So there's at least no human errors happening during the ADR observations, etc. So when we make this terminology more clear, we can then move on the possible approaches to pharmacovigilance monitored assets. So here I list 6 categories of the possible approach for the pharmacovigilance. We were not going to talk to every detail of it, but I would like to highlight the first 3 parts. But first, let's look at what are these 6. We have the passive surveillance and also the more active way, active surveillance, and also the middle one, which is called the stimulated reporting. So these 3 parts is the report, but in different ways. And on our right hand side, for the number 4 to 6, it's more like a study, like a research study, I should say. It's more about like comparative observational studies or the targeted clinical investigation or some descriptive studies as well. So first, I would like to highlight the importance of the passive surveillance. You can see this is the cornerstone of the pharmacovigilance data. That's composed of the passive surveillance, spontaneous reports, and case series. So when we talk about spontaneous reports, that we often refers to give alert on rare adverse events, and which is actually spontaneous report is the major role to identify a safety signal once this drug has been posted on the market. And then case series is another main tool that which is more useful in the hypothesis generation compared than to just to verify an association between drug exposure and outcome. So it's more for your reference to generate a hypothesis, and it can be helpful to distinct whether such adverse event has been occurs more frequently with a certain drug therapy, and such very distinct adverse events such as like Stevens-Johnson syndromes or the TENS toxic epidermal necrolysis or the anaphylactic shock. So these very specific events that oftentimes a personnel cannot be missed would report this data out. So these are a case series, and the spontaneous report are a useful tool to spontaneously collect this data and also for the rapid follow-up. So this is for the passive surveillance. Second, stimulated reporting. So what is the stimulated reporting means here? That if we say that from the passive surveillance, you are expecting a patient, him or herself, to report an adverse event to you spontaneously, then here a stimulated reporting is refers to the role to report as by those healthcare professionals for the certain caution products. So just tell listeners, tell doctors, tell the pharmacists to keep keep an eye on medication use for these patients. And what are the approach? There's often the online reporting systems that can simulation of reporting adverse event collection efficiently. But there's also drawbacks, I should say. I put cultured words here, as you can probably imagine that in, let's say, in a hospital setting, human errors does happens sometimes. And sometimes it is hard to distinguish whether this patient is having, let's say, having rash or having the vasculitis because of the spontaneous reaction, or it's because of the human errors from give a bad IV administrations, so the drug has been leakage or something like that. So in that case, it would be really considered or causing some hesitation for a healthcare profession to report such events if that is be counted as or be classified as a human error in the end. So here, to encourage a better culture to having a good stimulated reporting, that we need to really highlight this issue to not to use these assets as a punishment, and you have to make the staff feel comfortable to report such events. So this way, we would like to reduce the reporting bias or recall bias, and also trying to get rid of those hesitations and trying to stimulate a good or better accurate incidence rate. So here I would like to let you guys see the assets in our hospital, and also from the national assets as well. So we have a system in our hospital which we refers in short as AERS system, Adverse Event Reporting System. So in these systems, we are not only report any adverse drug events itself, but just drugs related adverse event reaction. We are reporting everything that we think that should not be happened. So including an ADR to drug reaction, and also including to refer the human error event in these systems as well. So who does this report is reported by the staff in the hospital. And how do we collect the data and analyze the data? Well, we will have these medication-related events reported to the pharmacist department, and the pharmacist here would do the first assessment and then decided which reporting events is tends to be more like a true event to be reported. Then we will forward and refer the report to another system which is not owned by our hospital, but owned by the Taiwan government, which is called the National ADR Reporting System. So here that pharmacy had been screened the data and reported and make it more reliable, you can say. So we have to enter the data, and then the government owns the data, owns the report. That is how we work for a very big part in the pharmacovigilance work and monitor. So let's back to the other pathway. So the third one here I would like to mention about the active surveillance, which we included sentinel sites. Like we have the active surveillance carried out at a CGH or a nursing home or a hospitals, and also to registers for a drug event monitoring better approach. So in this way, you are not waiting to just sitting here and to see whether any events had happened to you today in a round or so. By active here, like we're saying that we actively ask others to see if there is any events that we need to document. So you have to ask very first. So here is the systems that I would like to show you. And sorry for the on pictures is using in the Chinese Mandarin, but you can pictures that. So on the left hand side is our in our pharmacy systems, and when a pharmacy is sitting at the counter, dispensing counter, is already to deliver the medication to the patient, and at a time when the barcode have these specific drug code entry, and which those for those drug codes had been targeted as the surveillance drug, then a questionnaire will pop up on the screen to ask the pharmacist to nicely ask the patient about what is the reactions that this patient may or may not have been encountered with, and over time the question is to report any side effect to be recurred. So and we will, after pharmacy asking patients, well, hey, say like Mrs. Alice, you have to using this drug for 2 months. Do you have any adverse reactions, such as are you having headache? Do you ever have a diarrhea event or having rash? So quickly document whatever the patient say yes or no, and then save the data. And in the CPOE entry level, we can then see this documented as the report. So this is, by doing this, we are calling the active surveillance. And as for what are the drugs that has to be doing these active surveillance things, well, sometimes it's requested by the government. The government may target several medication that they think has higher safety issue, higher risk in the safety part, and will ask a pharmacist or the hospital to document for that. Or sometimes the request is from the manufacturers themselves, that they would like to actively monitor more safety issue, and so they will request our favor as well. And sometimes regarding a request from others, it is as the hospital pharmacy would like to initiate the monitoring event as well. Okay, so other approaches for effective pharmacovigilance monitor, that just doing the studies, just like we are doing here in the master or the PhD program. So here are the possible approaches, and I believe you all know the difference in terms of different study design, so I will not go through every detail of it. So we are doing a cross-sectional study by doing survey, or using case control study to collect more rare events, rare ADR, or rare complication. And you can also largely use cohort study to do the exposure versus non-exposure case. And targeted clinical investigation might have to be another perspective studies, I should say that. And as for this number 6, the descriptive studies, that here by saying that we are looking into more details of the patient's nature history or nature disease progress, and what are those progress have the interaction with their medication use. And also you can also use the drug utilization study or the cost effectiveness studies, etc., to do more survey. So these are all including into the pharmacovigilance scope, so which is a very broad one, and you should not be unfamiliar with it because we are all doing these studies. Okay, so after introduce the possible pathway, let's look at what are Taiwan's FDA, or in short as TFDA, do as their official tool to do the pharmacovigilance. So this is the slide I modified a bit, translated from the Mandarin to English. And you can see a 2x2 table that as for the monitor part, we separate it as the passive monitor, which is collecting report from patient or from the institutions, or then the active monitor things, that is the government will do something actively themselves. And we separate the columns by the data from the abroad information or the Taiwan local data. So that's from the left down part that you can see again that the passive monitor one is very is a major part of that is the national ADR reporting system, reported by whom? By a patient himself or herself, and also by the pharmacists, and also by the hospitals, by any health related institutions can all report the system. And then other tools for the passive monitor including the new drug monitoring, which by saying that we are referring to any new medications just freshly approved got the label from the FDA, TFDA approval, and within the first 5 years from receiving the official approval, the manufacturers itself has to be responsible to report any drug safety issue to the government. This is mandated by FDA, by TFDA. And then another thing that we can do in here is called the Taiwan Drug Relief Database. And by saying that we are the Drug Relief Database is a place that is collecting patients' data that already has the adverse drug reaction and sometimes causing very bad impact to the health, like to making the disabling or even making a death events. And in this part that there is a foundation that would like to donate money or donate some reimbursement to those patients or the survivors or the patient's family. And the database here is referred to as the drug relief database. So you can imagine that there are a lot of the precious ADR reports from this database that we can use. But important thing to be noted with is this relief database only contains medication events related to those legal labeled use. So if there's any drug use that related to the off-label or like the COVID-19 oral drugs, oral antivirus drugs like Paxlovid or the Molnupiravir, those are the actively being used but is not officially approved by TFDA, which these two are only have the emergency utilization approval EUA. So any if there's any adverse event happened to these drugs, COVID-19 drug use, oral antiviral use, then this Taiwan Drug Relief database would not have those data and would not have reimbursed payment to the patients or the patient's family. Alright, so this is the passive monitor pathway. And in terms of the active monitor, that we would have the board information that keep looking up on the website from others from the advanced countries, such as the States, Japan, and a lot of Europe countries. And by there, we are looking for any medication safety warning or medication safety alerts that may be pop up and has the same product strengths as Taiwan's, so we can have those heads up earlier if we can catch up. So that is one important thing to do the active monitor. And then from the local part that we are using the local nationwide health insurance database approach to collect our local data to see if there's any new study things can be forming and can be generate the useful information, and also from the other pharmacoepidemiology studies, as you can imagine. Okie dokie. So if any potential safety event had been assured and had been facilitated, and what are the likely reaction that the government may do to this safety issue? Well, several things that may be happening here, whether it's to enhance the medication level, to highlight the importance in things, to educate patient better, or to educate the prescriber better, and also to ask the manufacturers to modify the package insert with more properly wording or more sufficient information to let the provider to know the information they should know. They should be warned with. And also, if that is a very bad event, then this drug may be limited to its eligible use, to withdraw its approval, or to withdraw from market. Things all had happened before. Alright, so let's have a 5 minutes brain pause, and I would like to ask you to quickly think about these questions again, like I mentioned. What is pharmacovigilance? Do you have a better understanding so far? Why there's a need for pharmacovigilance than just the clinical trial itself? What is the difference between pharmacovigilance and clinical trials? And who to better initiate or report of an pharmacovigilance event? So, in a short summary here, that I would say pharmacovigilance is any events to better monitor not only drug safety, but also other important factors can be classified as pharmacovigilance. So what about your thoughts? Let's have a brain pause for 5 minutes. You can pause here. Alright, so for the second part of today's course, we are talking about the REMS, which is so-called risk evaluation and management, or mitigation strategy. So a REMS program here is firstly refers to U.S. the United States specific FDA-initiated program, which is a specific drug safety program, I should say that. They take action from pharmacovigilance data, and what are the targets medications? As you can imagine, it's not every medication that has to be put on the REMS program or REMS monitor. They only target a few medications or biologics that require a REMS, so you can imagine those medications that has to be associated with several serious safety concerns. And what do the government do? The US FDA requires the manufacturers themselves to come up with their REMS program, to ask them to include at least a medication guide, communications to health providers, and also the necessary elements to assure the safety use, and to implementation system to create as well, to create a platform for the users to assure their safety use has been achieved. And what are the goals for REMS program? The goal is to help ensure the benefits of the medication is really outweigh the risk and had been used correctly. And they will also reinforce medication use behavior from the correcting from either the wrong prescribing patterns or the incorrect prescribing patterns or the abuse or misuse from the patients themselves. So to reinforce the medication use behaviors and take actions that support the safe use of that medication specifically. So you can imagine the REMS program, although it all called the REMS, but the actual content for each identified target medications is different. It's really different from each other. So, how does the REMS do? What is the workflow look like? How does it integrate into, let's say, prescribers or the pharmacist workflow? So first of all, in REMS program that we are introducing you several key stakeholders that you need to know first, including the pharmaceutical manufacturers, including physicians and pharmacist end, and then the patient end. So from this flow chart, let's start it from the right hand side first. That there is the manufacturers to provide the REMS program, to provide the REMS platform, and then they will require the healthcare systems EHR, which is the electronic health record system, to attach to that, and also when a physician wants to, or the provider wants to provide patient such medication, then that order had to be upload to from the healthcare system, upload to the REMS, and had to be documented and provided. And that provider itself has to be eligible, or you say to be certified by this REMS program approval as well. And after the physicians upload the data to the CPOE, to the REMS platform, and what does the pharmacy do? Pharmacy has to be, again, to have the approval from access the REMS, and then to verify the REMS data, to see whether this physician has to prescribe the medication correct. And finally, when this is all done and processed and linked, the REMS documentation had been provided to the patient, and then the pharmacy can pick out the prescription and deliver or dispense to the patients. So that is the process workflow. Sounds complicated, right? But you can see why there has to be pharmacy here in this REMS program. And pharmacy does more than catching errors, I should say. It's not only doing the verification, but a lot of potential role at pharmacy or a pharmacist can try to do in this process. So REMS intent, the intentions are to use REMS as an opportunity, a medication guide for patient, and also as an education chance to reinforce medication use behavior and actions that I repeat already, and also does a lot of the training with hope to the healthcare providers who prescribe the product, and please notice to the important safety issue and to monitor well, to do well first before everything safety event from happening. And information that prescriber can use to educate patients in the safe use. So not only to educate, to train the provider, but also equip this provider to how to better educate patients. And announcement to prescriber about the existence of the REMS and their need to complete the training. So believe me, they have to provide a real map to them. And also REMS intention to provide the manufacturers have to seasonally or occasionally regularly doing the assessment, evaluation, and surveillance. And instructions for companies to develop a single and shared systems is also important as well. You don't want the data to be too complicated to achieve, and you don't want it too easy to be accessed as well. You know what I mean? To let everyone can easily access to see that. That's not something we would like to see. So REMS is starting long ago in 2009, but the amount of that, the amount of medication joining REMS had been increasing and decreased as well during because of several different issues. But in terms of the medication level, you can say that we can separate the medication into three categories here. That is, medication have no such important safety issues had been already approved for prescription use, and which in these terms had a relatively lower risk of the drug, so REMS is not unnecessary. And there's another higher end that it has a strong risk of medication use. So in this case, those medications would not receive FDA approval to be put on the market. So because the risk has already outweighed the benefit. So there is no REMS for that as well, because you won't see these medications on the market to be used. So what is REMS really served for? It serves for those medications that would not be FDA approved or remain on the market without a REMS. So which terms that REMS is the last key, is used as the last strength to achieve those balance, to achieve and hope that the benefit used is still outweigh the risk. Okay, so here's the link I provided here that you can access and see what is the official status in terms of the number of medications having REMS programs in the US. So here's the REMS dashboard, and as I access today, since 2009 to 2022, that there has been already near 300 medications came out with REMS program, but only remains 62 is still currently active. So here are the bar chart. I only select the current active, still alive REMS program. You can see from which years that it had started with. And if you are interested, you can go scroll on the website and you can see which specific brand name that has the REMS to accompany with. So again, that's back on the pharmacy and back on the pharmacy management. So in REMS, now you kind of have a better understanding of how this is going. So what are the roles? What are the responsibility for the pharmacist that you can imagine in this REMS action? Well, from the reference that I can look out for, several has been listed that the pharmacist provides a vital role here, that they have to not only to help to verifications to verify the completed REMS requirement, but also they have to determine a strategy to ensure the benefits outweigh the potential risk when they are doing the prescription verification, and probably have to discuss with their physician properly, because this is about a true, real clinical safety issue, not just the paperwork, not just to entry data and to upload data to fulfill the paper form. And they have to facilitate with still the administration work, and I believe that is not a small thing. So you have to help yourself, help the pharmacy to get registered, and you have to help the physician, help the nurse practitioner, physician assistants to get registered as well, to equip those providers to do that. It's not the manufacturers to do that. It's the pharmacist at the end to help everyone equip this REMS requirement. And also, you may be required to taking other actions by the physicians, pharmacists, and patients. Must be a lot of education talked with the patients, I believe, and you have to dispensing the medication right to the patient, of course, and eligibility. And important part to do all these, you have to make sure you and your staff, you and your colleagues have to be competent and easily accessible with respect to education information to those physicians and patients about the safety concerns, how to explain with this safety issue with the patients and not causing them panic, how how to deliver the right information to the physician to let them understand this is a real thing, not just kidding. And you have to report correctly as well to report a significant adverse reaction for all these drugs. So herein, I would like to provide you guys with the using the last few minutes to talk about 3 medications or 3 groups of medications that I have known, and some examples I have to see it myself when I was in the States a few years ago. So the first example is the most famous one that you don't want to be missed, is the opioid crisis in the United States. So you may have been heard that in the past 20 years, past 2 decades, the opioid crisis, abuse and misuse issue is a hassle there and still not really probably addressed so far, sadly. So from the CDC statistical number here, you can see that the overdose death involving opioids related has been increasing even though all these recent years after the 2015. And what are the opioids that we involved with? Well, you may see that is the drugs, the illegal drugs, heroin especially, but no, it's not the most attributed one. The most category of opioids contributed to the overdose death is the synthetic opioids such as fentanyls and tramadols in the state. So what does the state do? The United States do in response to that? Well, a lot of the REMS programs have been initiated since 2010 already. That at least this part that all the extended release oral opioids has to be listed, because the extended release form has higher rates to be misused and also abused, because it contains higher and easier to causing the user to having the euphoria feeling. So you can say the extended release medication is more attractive to them, to the abusers. So hydromorphone, oxycodone, and oxymorphone, and also for others like methadone and the transdermal fentanyls, those easy to be accessed and abused, has their own REMS program. And what does the REMS program do for these opioids? Well, this is not very beautiful pictures, I'm sorry, but we can still see a few category here that each brand name drugs may be differently, but the same shared approach, including the medication guide, and to come up with the communication plan with the provider and the patients, and also the elemental elements to ensure the patient's safety use, and also comes up with good or complicated platform as the implementation system. And also there's a timing basis assessment approach to counter. So here is a reporting system called radars that collect the REMS information from the opioid analgesics. As you can see that according to the tables, that after implementation of 36 months of that study period, it's not a very long period though, but the REMS program is useful to significantly decrease the opioid prescription volume. But we should notice that it's not a very long study period, and it's not really significant, less significant difference. So whether this REMS program is really useful for training, by doing more effectively training and patient education, and we can reduce some prescribing over volume, but whether this decreasing value can reflect on also decreasing the overdose, death, or the misuse event, or other adverse clinical events, is another really important thing that we need to keep in mind. All right, so another case that I'm presenting to you is clozapine. Is an antipsychotic which used to treat patients with schizophrenia. What is the safety issue it combines with? A lot. But the most important things that I want you to notice is bone marrow suppression. Bone marrow suppression, which would drop the CBC, the white count, the white blood cells will decrease. And you can see here that even to a point may cause patients to have the neutropenia risk, and also the hematology abnormal thing. What is the monitor plan? It had to be blood drawn regularly. According to the picture here, I used the Lexicon data that the ANC monitoring is to decrease the frequency. For those who prepare to use clozapine for longer than 1 year, better have your baseline ANC check and then every 3 months for the supplied. And as for those have the short-term use from 6 months to 12 months, you need to make decisions about ANC monitoring on a case-by-case basis, but by no means you cannot just prescribe the drug and don't have your patient's blood checked. So what is the REMS about in clozapine specifically? So it targets a very specific goal to mitigate the risk of severe neutropenia associated with clozapine. That first to educate prescriber and pharmacists about this risk of severe neutropenia, and also what are the appropriate monitoring requirements. Second, to inform patients about the risk of severe neutropenia and appropriate monitoring requirements. Third, to ensure prescribers submit the documentation that periodically monitoring of patients is performed to identify the severe neutropenia. Fourth, ensuring the prescriber documents a risk-benefit assessment when ANC falls below the acceptable range as described in the prescribing information. Then to establish the long-term safety and safe use of clozapine by enrolling all patients who receive clozapine in the registry. So what should the pharmacists do in response to these clozapine REMS? Here are some points that you don't want to be missed. Pharmacy need to register first to be eligible to dispense the clozapine. And second, to be specific days supplied may be dispensed. And pharmacy must receive documentations of blood work. And if a prescription is not valid, which means that although the prescriber did order the drug, but this prescription system is not working and is stuck in there, the pharmacist has to check immediately that whether the window, the blood check window is limited again, and have no recent blood data checked. And if that case, pharmacists have to call in prescriber to order a blood check for patients, whether this patient is in the inpatient setting or the outpatient setting. And because the clozapine REMS is so comparatively more complicated, you can say, so it has temporarily closed last year for a few months due to the difficulty to causing the patient access the drug. Like you can imagine, a lot of high code volumes and long code ways for the stakeholders, and to a point that patients miss the medication window, and that is not the good part that we would like to see. But So the FDA is now doing some communication with the stakeholders and announce that they would open later in the end of last year, but actually it's still pending thus far from their website. So for the close-upping, whether doing this blood check regular is appropriately or very or enough, or the burden is okay, or actually is a bit too much, I think there's still room to be debate with. All right, our last example here is vigabatrin, which is medication that I found very special with. So what is vigabatrin? I'm not sure if you heard of this before. It's an anti-epileptic specific for the pediatrics, which with the two main indication. That one is for those with 2 years and older, but have the refractory complex partial seizures. That in this case, physician can use vigabatrin to pediatrics if that case has already try other anti-seizure medication but all fail. Then that's the timing that they can do for the refractory complex partial seizure. Another case is to use for those from 1 month to 2 years pediatrics as using vigabatrin as monotherapy for the infantile spasms, in short IS. And what is the safety issue about vigabatrin? Well, on the screen you can see it's about vision loss, and not temporary but permanent vision loss. It has very serious side effect that you can see if you have been impacted by vigabatrin. By your adulthood, it can be like more than 30% risk having the visual field loss, or at least having blurred vision. So per the FDA black box warning, and it has been mandated that the vision should be assessed at baseline before you starting using vigabatrin, and also every 3 months during the therapy, and 3 to 6 months after discontinuation. So vigabatrin, which in the commercial name is called Sabril, that as the slide here you can see, if a patient is having impact from the vision constrictions from the vigabatrin, it will have the vision would lose on the marginal space and become less clear. So this is the really real things that using anti-seizures on the vulnerable pediatrics with permanent vision loss impact. So this is the website you can see, you can access from the Pharmacovigilance REMS program. It has to access separately into prescriber page and pharmacy page. On the prescriber page, you have to review and consult and submit the order to pharmacy that has the verified access to dispensing the drug. As for the pharmacy page, a pharmacy has to be enrolled in the vigabatrin program first, and then being trained you need to be oversee the necessary staff training to helping not only pharmacy but also helping their prescribers. And then your work, your main mission is to do the verify to prior to each dispensing of vigabatrin to verify if this physician is certified, and if that patient has been enrolled in a program as well, has been registered. So last, I would like to share, in the end of the REMS introductions from the state, it's a few points that I've noticed one time when I was in the state in 2020, that there is a nationwide children's hospital in Ohio state, and I was doing a shadow here, and with a pharmacy resident, and that resident pharmacy one day she brought me to a new physician provider, new physician assistant. So to this PA and saying that we are scheduling time with you. That's please do this vocabulary REMS education program with us. And so the pharmacy resident educate that new PA staff about what is the vocabulary clinical use in the infantile spasm, in the refractory seizure, and why there's a need for such a need to be monitored in terms of the vision loss permanently. And then after explaining this, the residents help the PA to access the REMS program and help the PA to be registered. So that is counted as an in-service provided by a pharmacy resident. And this experience that I'm not talking to, I'm not the pharmacy to talk to the PA. But I was like shadowing. So I was really impressed me a lot, I should say. They say, wow, this is not just a mandated administrative work that pharmacist has to do another job to fulfill the requirement from the government or from the manufacturer, but instead this is a really needed things for the patients and good things to doing as the teamwork, as the collaborations with PA nurses and prescriber, all these providers, and also to help them to pay attention to these medication safety issues. So that is really helpful. So the last, we will stop our talk today here, but I would like you to think about another 5 minutes before you turn off this camera. So focusing on the REMS, you all know it focuses on medications use safety specifically and to take actions for this higher risk medication. So do you think REMS is a good approach to enhance the prescription safety overall? And how can we define if a REMS program is effective enough or is just too lengthy instead? And the third question, you can think in this vocabulary story that the pharmacy resident talked to a new PA in the hospital. What role do you think the U.S. pharmacy residents play in that scenario compared to only doing order verifications by phone or fulfilling paperwork? And then, do you think Taiwan may need such REMS program or not? Why or why not? Do you think its manufacturers should provide its assistance and ask physicians to enter the data before they give medication to the patients? Or do you think it's the government side has to access this data? So these questions, think about these questions before you go to bed tonight, and I would like to conclude here. So to initiate and reinforce REMS program in response for the high-risk benefit medications, maybe appropriate, maybe too heavy loading, but definitely will be helpful for our patients. All right, good for you to know. No assignment for today, but you are very welcome to choose any of the questions that I have you to have brain pause. Choose anyone if you like to share your thoughts on the discussion part on TMU. So thank you for listening, and I'm Alice Yahan, and you can find me at this email address. Okay,